This is bad news, isn't it, for us, for British consumers?
Yeah, let's get on to OPEC. Let's just talk first about Keir Starmer, if I may. He's down at Hinkley Point, where we're building the first nuclear power station for many years in the UK. It's Europe's biggest infrastructure project. I was down there just a few weeks ago. Starmer is basically down there saying that he thinks nuclear is OK. Nuclear is about a fifth of our energy supply these days. In France, it's 70%. That's why energy is so much cheaper there. And he wants to say that his party will push forward with building new nuclear plants, cutting costs for consumers and creating jobs.
Yes, indeed. I mean, look, what's going to happen? The unions aren't happy with this, are they? And they bankroll the Labour Party. And this demonstrates to me that if Starmer gets in, we will have 5 years of a civil war on the left.
Well, I think the unions are pretty happy that we're building new nuclear power stations. What they're really not happy about is the fact that Keir Starmer's Labour Party is saying they won't allow any new investment in new oil and gas fields in the North Sea. This is a story we've covered closely on GB News. We still get 75% of our energy needs from oil and gas here in the UK. About half of that oil and gas we generate and mine and create ourselves. Even the government's Climate Change Commission, the sort of in-house cheerleader for green policy, says that by the end of 2030, we're still going to be using lots of oil and gas in this country. So it does seem to make sense to me to use our own oil and gas, but Labour doesn't want that. And that has really put them at loggerheads with two of the biggest trade unions in the country. Check out these words from some of these union leaders. So here we've got Gary Smith, who's General Secretary of the GMB, which is the third biggest union in the country. There's a lack of intellectual rigour and thinking. Their policies are going to create a cliff edge with oil and gas extraction from the North Sea. It's time for Labour to focus on the right thing rather than what they think is the popular thing. Because, of course, 200,000 jobs in the British oil and gas industry. And then we go on, Sharon Graham, she runs the second biggest union in the UK, Unite, massive bankrollers of Labour. Labour must now be very clear that they will not let workers pay the price for the transition to renewable energy. It's reckless in the extreme to talk about halting this industry without offering a coherent, fully funded plan for jobs. Sharon Graham actually comparing potentially this transition to green energy, what it means for jobs in the sort of traditional fossil fuel sector, with the demise of coal mining when we were kids in the 1980s. And we know the massive political ructions that had. And what we've got here is we've got the kind of metropolitan, university town, lovey side of the Labour Party, let's be holier than thou on the green side, hitting directly the kind of red wall, blue collar, boiler suit wearing classes who get great jobs in the oil and gas industry. I was up in Aberdeen recently. I mean, talking to lots of older people in pubs and clubs, they're saying, what are our sons and daughters going to do if they're not going to work in oil and gas? There was very little here before oil and gas.
Plus the insurance policy of being able to drill for oil and gas as a backup. I think many people would agree that we can pursue renewables, no problem. But why not have that insurance policy in an unpredictable world, in a dangerous world? We don't want to be reliant on Saudi Arabia or, God forbid, Russia for future energy supplies. And, of course, we've done that deal with America to purchase shale gas. It makes no sense.
We are now importing huge amounts of LNG, we call it, liquefied natural gas, from the US. We're importing it for ourselves, but also for continental Europe as well. That has a massive carbon footprint because you have to liquefy the gas, you have to transport it 3,000 miles in a diesel fumed oil LNG ships. Then you have to regasify it. It's massively energy intensive. And talking about energy security, Mark, there was news over the weekend that the Saudis, who are at the centre of the OPEC exporters cartel, OPEC they create 40% of the world's oil production. They control 80% of the world's oil reserves. There was a meeting in Vienna of OPEC, the exporters cartel, over the weekend, and Saudi said they will unilaterally cut oil production by 1 million barrels a day. That's about 1%. That's big bananas. Saudi basically create 10, 11 million barrels a day. So 1 million barrels a day out of the 100-odd million barrels every day that the world uses, they're going to cut that. Already on global oil markets this morning, we've seen a 2, 3, 4% jump in oil prices. And that's going to eventually hit petrol and diesel prices again. And it's going to start muddying the narrative that energy prices are coming down, that the cost of living is coming down. And this is directly in opposition to what America wants, to what the UK wants. Saudi, seemingly one of our great allies, and yet they're doing exactly what we don't want them to do at a crucial time, of course. And some would say they're doing what Russia wants them to do.
Of course. God. One of the solutions, this isn't on our list, Liam, so apologies if I'm springing this on you, but Mark and I were talking about this plan now. We've got 2 trials in England, it's been trialled in Wales, for universal basic income, £1,600 a month. Only 30 people are going to be given this lump sum of this trial. I'm not sure what you can establish by 30 people. And then they're going to say, does this help your mental health? Will it help your well-being if you don't go to work and you get £1,600 a month from the government taxpayer? What do you make of that?
Well, as reporting the news, you're right, that's what the government is going to do. I'm quite surprised it's going to do that. In terms of a personal opinion, I've written lots about universal basic income. I think in many ways it's a kind of cry for help. It goes against all human nature to work and to provide. It seems like a kind of desperate measure. It worries me that a lot of kind of very wealthy business people, internet oligarchs and so on, they want a universal basic income in order to sort of keep the plebs safe and happy. It was tried in Finland and it was abandoned in Finland because of the impact it had on incentives. And it's also massively expensive.
And we had a dry run of it with the furlough scheme, didn't we? Liam, when did socialism suddenly win the argument?
It does surprise me that tax burden is at a 70-year high in this country, the share of GDP that goes to tax. But that's because public spending is high. Before COVID lockdown, public spending was generally around 40% of GDP in this country. It went up to 53 during the lockdown year, 2020, but it's now still around 44, 45, 46. So it seems to be structurally much higher than it was. And, it's a lesson of history, isn't it? Once the state grabs power, it's very reluctant to let power to give that power up. And it's hard for people to argue that the state should have less power because people accuse you of being uncaring and immoral.
Yeah, #BeKind, everyone.